20 days ago, the Classic Castle Colossal Castle Contest 22 closed down, and all the great entries submitted were locked in. In this video, we're going to be going over all the great builds that were submitted, including my entries, which we'll be covering over the next few weeks on this channel. Let's go over to view entries. There were 6 different categories: Crazy Carnival, featuring a medieval carnival; Crafty Creature, with a medieval monster or creature; Colossal Castle, where you had to build a huge fortress; Natural Phenomenon vignette, with a knight facing the elements in a 12 by 12 vignette; Studley builds, in which you couldn't use any tiles or curved slopes; and a battle scene. We'll be going through all of these in this video, starting with Crazy Carnival. I should also add that the Classic Castle Contest runs annually from November through December, as is shown on my Lego Competitions annual calendar, available over on my Flickr. The link is in the description. For Crazy Carnival, there were a few entries. We'll start off by looking at this Snowy Carnival, created by Louis of Nutwood. It's set in snow and features dark pine trees covered in snow with a large campfire. This one's particularly good, and I like the organic base shapes. Moving on, we've got this very crazy carnival scene, packed full of minifigures and interesting parts, like these octagonal ones. I'm assuming they're an old part, but I don't believe I've seen them before. I'm not a huge fan of this build, but I do like how the jousting was built on an angle. Next, we've got Jesters in Town. This one's a very vertical build and features a few general jesters, one juggling and one on the stilts, in a nicely built town. The buildings itself are quite good, but I think this would have been more appropriate for a different category than Crazy Carnival. Next, we have Medieval Square Carnival, another similar build featuring a few buildings and a carnival scene, although some of these minifigures don't look particularly medieval, but it's good to see that the builder is making do with what they have. Next, we've got a jester on a carriage going through the village. I like the tiled floors and how it fills the frame of the photo. Next, we've got this one called The Carnival is in Town, featuring old style minifigures and some nice house builds. And here is my entry, with a forestman stealing a pig. We've also got the carnival with the Queen, in which the Queen is in some sort of boat being towed through the market square. And the winner of this contest, take your guess in the comments below, was the carnival with the Queen, in which the Queen was featured in that boat. Moving on to Crafty Creature, we can see all the excellent builds that were submitted. We have this one, a cockatrice problem, with this nicely shaped bird on a square base. The Phoenix, utilizing various technique and I believe bionicle parts to achieve this build. Very inventive. We've got my build, the Guard Bat, which I'll be covering in a later video. This mouse called Reaper Cheap, very well shaped, utilizing a lot of curved slopes, and I particularly like the sword. And this one called Thorn Seed of Rebellion, featuring a well designed shield and sword on a what looks like a badger. And then the winner of this category, the Winter Guardian, It's a dragon perched on a rounded organic base with some nice cloth wings and a very well made tail. Moving on to Colossal Castle. Here we've got one of the castles using a combination of both old and new parts in an inventive way. This one's really uses really different combinations of parts. We've got old and new, we've got Lego Friends and then normal Lego. We've even got a white beard on a red-headed minifigure. And a combination of black and grey castles. Here's another classic style castle that was entered, and my build, the Dwarf Mountain Castle, which we'll be featuring in a later video. This one is a micro scale mock. We've also got the Fortress of Hyrofure, a very nice build that ended up being runner-up in this category. I particularly like how it rises up from the base, and we've got all those green bamboo elements around the base. The texturing is also really good, and the wooden ramparts also look particularly good, as well as the brick-built sail and the white snake used as smoke. This was the winning build. It is the Lion Knight's Castle. Unlike a lot of the other builds, this one is tan and features a lot of minifigures and a lot of sand green rockwork at the base. I like how part of the castle is ruined, exposing the bricks underneath. And then next we've got West Point Castle. Natural Phenomenon Vignette was the most popular category with the most entries, and we'll be looking at a few of my favorites. We've got the winner of this category, Against the Storm by a Brick Dreamer. I think the reason it won was because it was able to convincingly capture the wind, mainly through the minifigure posing, the hair, and the bent trees and flex tube flag. This one was a personal favourite of mine, Beware of Mine Flooding, in which a dwarf rides a minecar through a flooded mine. I liked the gradient of colours on the soil and the fact that it was raining at the top of the build, adding to the story about the mine. These large rockwork elements work really well, and the mushrooms are a great addition. This Soundstorm is also an interesting one, featuring Harry Potter broom pieces, horns, tan bananas, and all sorts of curved slopes. For some reason it was built at an angle, and I can't tell if that works or not in this situation, but it definitely is innovative. Here was my build, Knight Dives for Treasure, in which a knight dives under the river. We'll be covering this in a later video. Here's another build called Snow Fighter. I particularly like the tooth plate attached to the shield, like snow being caught on it as it blows in the wind. Some notable parts include these eggshell pieces, as well as these curved horn pieces. Windy Waterfall is also one that I like, mainly because of the waterfall and the trees, which look like they're blowing crazily in the wind. Wrath of the Sea by Louis of Nutwood is also another inventive build. This one doesn't utilize the full 12 by 12 that the builders were allowed, but uses some nice part usage, including white croissants for the sails, brown frogs for the front of the ships, and cupcake pieces and hinge plates for the froth of the giant wave behind them. Moving on to Studley builds. For this category, builders weren't allowed to use any tiles or curved slopes. First entry we'll be looking at is this one. I like the curved tower, but to be honest, that's about all. This one by Louis of Nutwood, the winner of the overall category. It It features a goat and a dog meeting at a fence. I like the shaping of the trunk of the tree, but I'm not a fan of the rest of the build. I just don't think it turned out that well, and he didn't use all the parts that he could have to achieve better. Plant plates were allowed. Pretty much all plant pieces were allowed, so I'm not sure why he went for this very blocky look that I think didn't do as well as it could have. Here was my build, the winner of this category, Castle Pumpkin Farm. We'll be covering this in a later video. And here's Edo Castle. Yeah, there's not much to say about this one. As well as a Lonely Tower. Also not much to say, but I think these could be Duplo pieces. On the other hand, these studs are the same size as Lego studs, so that means they're not, I reckon they're just old pieces from perhaps 4+ sets. And these pieces are also a notable exception to the normal pieces we see. As you can see, they have distinct faces instead of being the 2x2 cylinders we're used to. Here was the runner-up of this category, the Monastery. It's a very nice build. I like the use of medium nougat and dark red in that colour scheme. Finally, we've got the battle scene category. First of all, here was my build, and once again we'll be looking at this in a later video. We've got Battle on the Ice 1242, featuring two factions, what looks like Vikings and what looks like some sort of snow knights battling on ice. I particularly like the ice effect with that dentist colour and the white broken up with transparent bricks between them. I also like the use of this pre-molded tree piece and the white plants seen throughout. Battle of Agincourt is another build featuring some inventively coloured trees and another historical build based on a real battle in history. This build ended up being the winner of the category. It is a battle on a bridge between the Dragon Paladin Knights and the Lion Knights. This looks a lot like a custom printed shield, which I wouldn't use in a build, but these people would, and that's why they won. Here was another good build, another battle on another bridge, this one over a river. I think the minifigure posing could have been a bit better. None of the minifigures are facing the audience, but overall it's a very good build. The raid on the Queen's carriage, very flat terrain. The trees are well shaped, especially this birch tree over here. And it's interesting that they used flesh-coloured minifigures instead of yellow. Perhaps this is also based on a historical event. We've got this build here, which looks like it was built by a child. Forgive me if I'm wrong, but it's good to see that even children are entering the mock building contests. The final build in this category, featuring some Vikings fighting some orcs at a very well built wall, featuring some rare tan pieces on top. Once again, we have that iconic curved snot built base in pretty much all of Louis of Nutwood's builds. And that's all we'll be looking at in today's video. This is all available at a link in the description, this contest, and I'll probably enter next year in the Colossal Castle Contest 23. Make sure to like and subscribe. That's all for this video, but I'll see you next week. On a side note, what do you think of the new outro? Let me know in the comments what you think of it.